ripples beneath the surface. David decided to comply, at least on paper. For the next few mornings, he sat on his deck with a mug of dark roast and Sunny by his feet, the fishing pole left inside. The lake looked different now. Still calm, still beautiful, but it didn't feel his anymore. He wasn't sure it ever had. It bothered him more than he expected. Not just the fine, not even the accusation. What unsettled him most was the quiet certainty with which they assumed they could tell him no. Not explain, not warn, just penalize and expect obedience. He started doing what he'd always done when something didn't sit right. He read. That afternoon, he combed through the HOA handbook, tucked away in a kitchen drawer since move-in day. 34 pages of rules and clauses. Grass must not exceed 2.5 inches. Exterior paint colors must fall within the approved natural tones. Holiday decorations allowed no earlier than November 15th. And buried on page 27, use of the lake and surrounding areas is restricted to HOA-sanctioned activities or use by residents possessing a valid access permit. David had never heard of such a permit. He'd certainly never been offered one. The next HOA meeting was 2 days away. He circled the date and decided he would attend. Not to argue, yet, but to observe. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a pale stucco building styled like a suburban Tuscan villa. Inside, it smelled like air freshener and stale coffee. Rows of neatly arranged folding chairs faced a raised table where the HOA board members sat like a panel of judges. David took a seat in the back, notebook in hand. At the center of the board sat Bradley Weston, the HOA president, clean-shaven, square-jawed, and perpetually dressed like he was headed to court, which made sense since he was a real estate lawyer by profession. His voice was smooth, firm, and dismissive in the way only practiced authority can be. Next order of business, Bradley said, is the reminder about lake usage. We've had several complaints about unregulated fishing. David raised an eyebrow. He was fairly certain he was the several complaints. Bradley continued. As always, permits must be requested through the proper channels. The rules apply to everyone. David's hand went up. I'd like to request one. A permit. Bradley looked over his reading glasses. Your name? David Carter. Willow Court, Lot 8. Bradley gave a thin smile. Mr. Carter, your fine was processed last week, correct? That's right. I paid it. Well then, Bradley said, as if the matter were resolved. Perhaps we can consider your request at a later date. These things take time and review. David nodded slowly. How do I apply? Email the board. There's a form. I didn't see any form on the HOA website. Bradley paused. We've been updating the website. I can have someone send it to you. Later, one of the board members, a woman named Janet, pulled David aside with a forced smile. Just so you know, the permits are mostly ceremonial. We don't really hand them out unless there's a specific reason. David stared at her. Fishing is a specific reason. She chuckled like he'd made a joke. I mean a community event. A kid's fishing derby or something. So the rules are real, but the permits aren't? He asked, deadpan. She blinked. It's more about maintaining standards. We like to keep things uniform. There was that word again. Uniform. The next morning, David took a walk through Willow Ridge, noting things he hadn't paid attention to before. A pickup truck in someone's driveway had political bumper stickers that would have earned him a visit from the compliance committee if it had been his. Another home had a flagpole with 3 flags, American, college team, and one that wasn't HOA approved by any standard. Then there was the new family on Maple Loop, a young interracial couple who had moved in 2 months ago. He introduced himself as they were unloading groceries. HOA give you the welcome packet? David asked. The man laughed. They gave us a fine for our mailbox being 2 inches taller than standard. That's new, David said. They also reminded us 3 times not to leave bikes on the front porch. They say that to everyone. Funny thing, the woman replied. Our white neighbor leaves hers out all the time. Nothing said. David nodded. Yeah, that tracks. That evening, David sat back on his deck with Sunny, watching the golden hour melt across the lake. He didn't fish. Not yet. Instead, he scrolled through public property records on his tablet. The lake, he discovered, was not HOA-owned. It was part of a larger parcel still listed under an LLC called Blueway Holdings, a development shell that hadn't updated its registry in over a decade. The taxes on it were paid, but barely. The HOA acted like they owned the water. But legally, they didn't. David grinned. Not broadly. Just enough to acknowledge the ripple of an idea forming. They wanted to play games with rules? He could play too, and he played to win. The weight of dust and eyes. The registration desk at the Carrin's Hollow Range was little more than a folding table propped under a canvas tarp, but the line stretched a good 20 meters. Dust kicked up with every footstep, caught in the high morning light and shimmered like powdered gold. The tournament had become more than just a tradition. It was a statement, a declaration of earthborn pride, frontier resilience, and who still ran the range. Mira stood near the back, wearing a plain brown jacket and holding a thin datapad in one hand. No flashy gear, no sponsor patches. She looked more like someone there to observe, not compete. The men ahead of her in line wore branded tactical suits and multi-lens visors. Some carried custom rifles in glossy carbon cases. Others exchanged exaggerated tales about last year's contest, each more embellished than the last. Rogan took that wind drift like a pro, bullet curved like poetry, one man boasted. I heard he shot blindfolded just to make it fair, another said with a chuckle. Mira said nothing. The desk was manned by a woman with a high ponytail and a quick eye. She glanced at Mira when it was finally her turn. Name? Mira Haines. The woman blinked, checked her tablet. New entry. Yes. You affiliated with a team? No. The pause was telling. The registrar tapped her stylus, marked the form, and handed Mira a small pin with the number 47. Booth 47. First rounds in 24 hours. You sure you're ready? Mira pocketed the pin. I'm sure. As she turned to leave, someone in the line behind her scoffed loud enough for her to hear. Hope there's a waiver for civilians. She didn't stop walking. Outside the tent, the range was in full preparation. Dozens of practice booths lined the main corridor, each with motion-tracking sensors, artificial wind generators, even gravity manipulators for species that hailed from different planetary conditions. Alien competitors were scattered throughout the grounds. Alive, pale-skinned Uraxi adjusted her telescopic lens with elegant precision. A hulking Brannock calibrated a shoulder-mounted blaster that looked more fit for war than sport. They kept mostly to themselves, respectful, focused. But the humans? They watched, judged, whispered. Mira caught the glances as she moved between them. Rogan Vale was easy to find. His laugh carried across the field like a shotgun blast. He stood beside a gleaming silver rifle twice the size of Mira's entire gear bag, entertaining a group of men like a king among loyal knights. Only surprise this year, he said, loud and theatrical, will be how fast I finish the finals. Someone nudged him and pointed toward Mira. You got competition, champ. Rogan looked over. His brow furrowed for half a second, then softened into a smirk. Her? Hell, I hope they give her a head start. The laughter was instant and cruel. Mira offered no reaction, just kept walking until she found booth 47 at the far end of the practice range, partially shaded by an old satellite dish. Her booth was simple. No adaptive targeting, no stabilization platforms, no kinetic dampeners. She didn't need them. She ran her hand across the metal railing, then sat down, placed her old rifle on the stand, and began cleaning it. Nearby, Jace waved from behind the spectator fencing. You actually signed up. She nodded. People are freaking out. Rogan thinks you were just a mechanic playing dress-up. Mira looked through her scope, adjusting the dials with precise care. Let them think. Jace hesitated, then leaned in closer. Why now? There was a long pause. Mira didn't answer. She simply locked the bolt and checked the recoil pad. The town of Carrin's Hollow had always walked a strange line. Humans claimed ownership of it, but the economy ran on alien trade. Markets carried more off-world spices than Earth-grown grain. Yet many settlers clung to an idealized past. When Earth was the center of civilization, when men like Rogan could walk into a room and be respected without needing to prove anything. Aliens were tolerated, not embraced. Women were acknowledged, not heard. And Mira? She didn't fit in any of their boxes. That evening, the town square filled with music and food in celebration of the contest. Children ran between stalls, merchants bartered loudly, and competitors boasted over mugs of fermented grain. Mira passed through it like a ghost. She didn't stop for food, didn't mingle. She moved toward the old war memorial near the edge of the square, a statue of a soldier in outdated armor, rifle pointed skyward. The plaque read, "To the defenders of Earth, may their aim never waver." She touched the base of it gently. Her eyes lingered not on the statue, but the small faded names etched beneath. Then she turned and walked home. The desert wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of laughter and music behind her. But Mira didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had already taken aim. The first shot. The morning of the competition dawned dry and cloudless, with the sun climbing fast over Carrin's Hollow. The range shimmered with heat mirages, distorting the far targets into watery ghosts. Spectators filled the bleachers, human and alien alike, murmuring with anticipation and scattered cheers. Hover drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting the event live to nearby settlements and fringe channels on the interlink. Each shooter had been assigned a booth. Steel-framed, covered with clear visors to shield from the sun, each was equipped with monitoring gear and high-def trajectory trackers. Mira's booth, number 47, stood at the far edge, half in shadow, half exposed to the wind. Fewer eyes wandered her way. A woman in the booth? Alone? With an old-fashioned rifle? Most assumed she was a placeholder. A side note, Jay stood among the crowd behind the security line, clutching a soda in one hand and craning his neck for a better view. He looked back and forth between the central booths, where champions like Rogan and Sirkan prepped their high-tech weapons, and Mira, who sat calmly, polishing her weathered scope with a piece of cloth. In booth number 3, Rogan stretched his arms, flexing in a tactical vest that clung tightly across his chest. His chrome rifle sat mounted on a gyro-stabilized stand, connected to a real-time AI wind compensator. A small group of followers gathered behind him, including the local news anchor, who leaned in with a mic. "Any thoughts before you take the first shot, Champion Vale?" she asked. Rogan grinned. "Just hope the others brought their training wheels." He tilted his head toward Mira's booth, loud enough to carry, and maybe a rocking chair. Laughter. The first round was announced. Standard distance, 600 meters. The target, 5 concentric rings, the center barely larger than a coin. Shooters had 2 minutes to adjust settings, fire a single shot, and wait for the results. The scoreboard blinked to life. Contestant number 1 stepped up, an Uraxi female with twin ocular implants. Her shot hit just shy of the bullseye. Applause. Score, 92.1. A few others followed. Varnaxi, Brannick, even one lean Martian-descendant human. All hit within the 80 to 95 range. Then Rogan stepped up. He made a show of it, taking a deep breath, winking at the camera drone, adjusting his cap backwards. Boom. His bullet tore across the field, piercing the air like a whisper of thunder. The scoreboard blinked, 95.4. Crowd erupted. Cheers. Fists in the air. Earth pride swelled. "Still the king," someone shouted. Then the announcer's voice cut in. "Contestant number 47, please take your position." Heads turned. Some chuckled. Jace leaned forward, heart thudding. Mira didn't look at the crowd. She stepped forward, unslung her rifle, and placed it gently on the stand. No attachments, no AI linkage, just cold steel, weathered wood, and old muscle memory. She adjusted the scope once. The crowd quieted slightly. Some leaned in out of curiosity. She inhaled slowly, exhaled, and pulled the trigger. No flourish, no dramatic pose, just the soft, sharp crack of a well-maintained weapon. The drone cameras struggled to track the shot. It moved fast, precise, like a flash through space. A long pause followed. Then, the target screen zoomed in. Dead center. Perfect bullseye. The score blinked across the display. 100.0. Silence. For half a second, no one reacted. The system hesitated, recalibrated. The judges checked again. Still, 100.0. Jace's jaw dropped. Someone in the bleachers said aloud, That's the record. Rogan stepped forward from his booth, peering toward her. She cheated. That's not possible. The announcer's voice stammered slightly. Contestant number 47, Mira Haines, has just set a new event record for round one. A perfect score. Mira stepped back from the booth and calmly resumed, cleaning her rifle. She didn't even look at the scoreboard. Rogan pushed forward toward the official desk. Check the sensors. Check the wind feed. That's impossible without trajectory assist. The judge replied without blinking. Her booth has no assist enabled. Manual settings only. We ran diagnostics. It's a clean shot. Carrin, the silent alien competitor, adjusted his goggles and gave a respectful nod in Mira's direction. Impressive, he said quietly. She's not what she seems. Jace, wide-eyed, whispered to himself, Who is she? As the crowd murmured and began to shift its gaze away from the center booths toward the woman at the edge, Mira calmly locked the bolt back on her rifle and placed a cloth over it. She said nothing, but the shot said everything. The echo after the shot. The second round came and went, and Mira hit another perfect bullseye, 100.0 again. By then, silence wasn't just surprise. It had shifted to reverence. People leaned in when she moved. The crowd, once buzzing with overconfidence and noise, was now pinned in place by something heavier, realization. By the third round, only a handful of contestants remained. Rogan had missed wide, an 89.4, and stormed off the range mid-match, blaming sabotaged wind feeds and overclocked alien tech. Carrin, calm and graceful, maintained high scores, but even he couldn't reach Mira's precision. No one could. After the final shot, another unerring bullseye, Mira quietly stood, lifted her rifle, and left her booth. Jace met her at the security rope, his eyes lit like twin suns. You won, he breathed. You broke the record. All of them. She offered him the faintest smile. It wasn't about that. A silence fell between them. Then he asked the question that had been building since day one. Who are you? She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she walked toward the judges' platform, where the tournament officials were already whispering among themselves, nervously watching the crowd and preparing to present the grand prize. Mira reached the base of the platform just as the announcer, a man with an overly smooth voice, raised his mic. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, but Mira raised her hand. He stopped. I won't accept the prize, she said quietly. Donate it to the Youth Marksman Program. The crowd murmured. The announcer blinked. Are you sure? That's 10,000 credits, Ms. Haines. I'm sure. A pause. Then Carrin stepped forward and gave a deep, respectful bow in Mira's direction. The shot was clean. The best I've seen. Others slowly nodded. Even some of the men who had jeered earlier now stared with open curiosity. A few muttered apologies. Most just remained quiet. Rogan, long gone from the stage, would not return. One of the older judges stepped down from the platform. He was human, thin-framed, with deep grooves etched across his face from years in frontier sun. He approached Mira with cautious recognition in his eyes. I know that grip, he said, voice low, and that trigger discipline. You're not just some hobbyist, are you? Mira looked at him. I served. A long time ago. Special Recon. Earth Defense. They called us Shadows. The man blinked. Those units were classified. Ghost snipers. Precision beyond drones. Didn't think any survived the Bracca siege. Mira's expression didn't change. Most didn't. The judge stepped back and looked out over the crowd. You all thought this was just a contest, he said. But some contests, they draw ghosts. A silence followed his words. Then, slowly, the crowd applauded. Not loud, not forced, just honest. Earned. Mira gave a shallow nod, turned, and began walking back toward the edge of town. Jace hurried to catch up. They'll be talking about you for weeks, he said, breathless. Probably longer. She didn't answer. They might even offer you sponsorship deals, or maybe teach at the academy. I don't want any of that, she said gently. What? Mira paused beside the war memorial, the same one she had visited in silence days earlier. She looked at the engraved names again. Because, she said, I've already fought. I didn't come to be remembered. I came to remind them. Remind them of what? That humility matters more than legacy. That quiet doesn't mean weakness. That precision of thought, of action, isn't always loud. Jace fell quiet. The desert wind kicked up dust along the path. Behind them, cheers rose as Sirkan was awarded second place. The prize money was already being transferred to the youth program. In the days that followed, Carrin's hollow changed just a little. The general store owner who once called Mira the Quiet One, invited her for tea. The townspeople stopped whispering and started nodding when they saw her. Even the alien merchants seemed to stand taller when she walked by. Respect had been reset, not by words, but by action. Jace came by more often, sometimes to talk, sometimes to listen, and sometimes just to watch Mira clean her rifle beneath the low light of dusk. She never boasted. She never told the full story of her time in the shadows. But in every careful movement, every measured word, she taught something louder than a bullet ever could. That quiet people sometimes carry the sharpest aim.